The Grand Hall of the Interstellar Botanical Embassy shimmered under the light of three artificial suns. Delegates from 27 worlds huddled behind protective barriers, their breath held in collective terror. Security personnel, human and alien alike, had their weapons trained on a single point at the center of the room. Colonel Jack Reynolds stood alone on the speaker's platform, his weathered hands steady as they held a small glass bottle. The red liquid inside caught the light like fresh blood. At 65, Jack's military posture remained perfect, despite the faded maintenance uniform he wore. His eyes, sharp as they had been in combat 4 decades earlier, locked onto the crystalline form of Ambassador Zelnar. The alien's three eyes widened to their maximum aperture, his translucent skin pulsing with waves of distress that sent rainbow patterns cascading across his crystalline form. "Please," Zelnar's translator crackled, his voice trembling. "That biological weapon you're holding, it contains enough concentrated capsaicin to kill everyone in this room. Put it down before it's too late." The corner of Jack's mouth twitched upward. He unscrewed the cap with deliberate slowness. "What you call a weapon," Jack's voice rumbled across the silent hall, "I call Tuesday breakfast." With that, he tilted his head back and let 3 drops of the homemade hot sauce fall onto his tongue. The morning sun beat down on the New Mexico desert as Jack Reynolds knelt on the polished floor of the Interstellar Embassy's East Wing. His knees protested, a souvenir from a night jump in the Hindu Kush decades ago, but his movements remained efficient as he worked the mop across the floor. The building stood as America's pride, the first extraterrestrial diplomatic facility on Earth, established after first contact in 2080. For most of the staff, Jack Reynolds was invisible. Just another maintenance worker in a blue uniform, pushing a mop or changing light fixtures. Few noticed how his eyes missed nothing, how his movements conserved energy like a soldier on patrol, how he positioned himself to maintain sight lines to all exits. Old habits from 40 years in special forces died hard. The young diplomats in their tailored suits glided past him with barely a nod. Jack didn't mind. Invisibility had its advantages, just as it had during those long nights in Baghdad, Kabul, and a dozen classified locations that didn't exist on any map. "Morning, Colonel." Jack's eyes crinkled at the corners as Dr. Sarah Chen approached, carrying her usual oversized cup of coffee. At 35, she was among the youngest xenobiologists on staff and the only person who consistently acknowledged his existence and his past. "Acknowledge Chen Harriet." He nodded, continuing his methodical cleaning. "Big day ahead." Sarah leaned against the wall, observing him with genuine curiosity. "How is it that you clean these floors better than the automated systems?" Jack allowed himself a small smile. "Machines follow programs. I follow results." It was their usual morning ritual. Sarah would stop for a brief conversation while Jack pretended his job required his full attention. In reality, he could have mopped the entire wing in his sleep. "The Crystallian delegation arrives today," Sarah said, lowering her voice. "The ambassador himself, Professor Zelnar. They say he's one of their foremost xenobotanists." Jack's hand paused imperceptibly on the mop handle. The name triggered something in his memory, a classified brief from his final mission 20 years ago. Zelnar, the Crystallian scientist who had been spotted near that remote research facility in Peru. "Is that so?" he replied, neutrally resuming his work. "They've requested access to our botanical archives." Sarah continued, unaware of the thoughts racing behind Jack's impassive expression. "Something about comparative study of Earth's plant defenses." A commotion from the main atrium interrupted their conversation. Sarah straightened up, her professional mask sliding back into place. "Duty calls," she said. "See you around, Colonel." Jack watched her leave his mind, already calculating angles and possibilities. Zelnar. After all these years, this was no coincidence. He waited until the corridor cleared before pulling out his security badge, the lowest clearance level possible, but still enough to access basic systems. The mop and bucket were abandoned as he slipped into an empty office, his fingers flying over the keyboard with surprising dexterity for a man his age. The lab technicians had been struggling with the atmospheric analyzer for 3 days. The sensitive equipment designed to test compatibility between alien biology and Earth's plant compounds had malfunctioned during routine maintenance. 2 engineers and a specialist from the manufacturer had failed to restore it. Jack watched from the doorway as they argued over diagnostic readings, his mop and bucket providing the perfect cover for his presence. Their frustration was palpable as they prepared to ship the unit back for factory repairs, a process that would take weeks. "Excuse me," a timid voice interrupted the technicians' debate. All eyes turned to the door. The head engineer, Dr. Harris, didn't bother hiding his irritation. "Maintenance needs to wait. We're in the middle of something here." Jack remained in the doorway, his expression neutral. "Sir, I need to clean this area. Security protocols for the incoming delegation require all labs to be sanitized by 1400 hours. Harris waved dismissively. "Fine. Just work around us while we disconnect this piece of junk." Jack moved with practiced efficiency, positioning his cart precisely where he wanted it. As he mopped near the malfunctioning equipment, he casually observed the diagnostic screen, the pattern of blinking lights, the way the ventilation system interacted with the device. "Should power down the tertiary cooling system first," he murmured, almost to himself. The nearest technician glanced up. "What was that?" Jack kept mopping. "Nothing, sir. Just talking to myself. Bad habit from too many years alone in the field." Dr. Harris had paused, his attention caught. "Wait, what did you say about the cooling system?" Jack hesitated, then gestured toward the machine with his mop handle. "The tertiary cooling system is still running. It's creating electromagnetic interference with the primary sensor array. That's why your diagnostics are showing cascading errors." The room fell silent. 3 pairs of eyes stared at him. "And how exactly does a janitor know about tertiary cooling systems in classified xenobiological equipment?" Harris demanded. Jack shrugged, his face a mask of practiced humility. "Used to maintain similar systems in the military, sir. Different application and same basic design principles." The youngest technician was already following Jack's suggestion, powering down the subsystem. The error lights immediately stabilized. "I'll be damned," Harris muttered, watching as the system came back online. "It's working." Jack returned to his mopping, careful to keep his expression neutral, despite the satisfaction warming his chest. As the technicians excitedly ran diagnostics on the functioning equipment, Sarah Chen appeared in the doorway, her eyes moving from the celebrating engineers to Jack's seemingly disinterested form. When their eyes met, Jack saw something new in her gaze, curiosity mixed with dawning realization. She'd witnessed the exchange, understood its implications. He gave her the slightest nod before turning back to his mop. His cover, as just the janitor, had developed its first crack. The botanical archives occupied the embassy's lowest level, a climate-controlled vault housing thousands of plant specimens and digital records from Earth and 24 alien worlds. Access required special clearance Jack technically didn't possess. But security systems like people had blind spots. 20 minutes of observation had revealed the pattern of guard rotations, the location of cameras, and the staff members with the necessary access. At 2:37 a.m., when the night shift guards made their coffee run, Jack slipped into the archives through a maintenance tunnel he'd repaired the previous week. The access card he used had been cloned from a careless technician who regularly left his badge on his desk during lunch. The archives hummed with the soft sound of environmental systems maintaining perfect preservation conditions. Jack moved with purpose toward the restricted section where the newest alien botanical samples were stored before cataloging. His target, the Crystallian Research Station. The terminal accepted his stolen credentials without complaint. Jack's fingers danced across the keyboard, searching for any references to Zelnar or his current research. What he found made his blood run cold. Project files, detailed analysis of capsaicin and other plant-derived compounds, thousands of pages on the effects of Earth's spiciest plants on various alien physiologies. And there, in a restricted subfolder, weaponization potential of terrestrial capsaicinoids against crystalline nervous systems. The pieces began falling into place. 20 years ago, Jack had led a classified operation to investigate alien interest in a remote pepper farm in Peru, a farm that specialized in growing the world's hottest peppers. The mission had ended in disaster when his team encountered technology far beyond anything they'd been prepared for. 3 good men had died, and Jack had been quietly retired and discredited his reports about aliens harvesting Earth peppers, filed under delusion and PTSD. Now here was the proof. Zonar had been studying Earth's spiciest plants for decades, documenting their devastating effects on his own species. But why come to Earth now? Why risk direct contact? Jack downloaded the files to a secure drive and was about to log out when movement at the archive entrance caught his eye. The night guard had returned early. With practiced silence, Jack slid beneath a workstation, his dark maintenance uniform blending with the shadows. The guard's footsteps echoed through the archive as he made his routine patrol, passing within 3 feet of Jack's hiding place. Jack controlled his breathing, his heart rate barely elevated despite the danger. This wasn't his first time hiding from patrols in enemy territory. After the guard completed his rounds and departed, Jack waited an additional 7 minutes before emerging from his hiding place. The information he'd gathered needed verification, but his instincts were screaming. Zelnar wasn't here for a friendly botanical exchange. He was planning something far more sinister. As Jack navigated the maintenance tunnels back to safe territory, his mind returned to the classified files. One phrase kept repeating in his thoughts. The substance known as capsaicin represents the most lethal natural neurotoxin ever documented against crystalline physiology. The humble chili pepper Earth's culinary staple was apparently the deadliest weapon in the galaxy against certain alien species. Dawn broke over the New Mexico mountains as Jack made his way through the staff entrance, his maintenance uniform freshly pressed despite his sleepless night. The embassy buzzed with unusual activity as preparations for the crystalline delegation's arrival reached their final stages. In the East Wing bathroom selected because it had no surveillance, Jack waited. At precisely 7:15, Sarah Chen entered, closing the door behind her. "This better be important, Colonel," she said, her voice low. "Meeting you in the men's room isn't exactly protocol." Jack handed her a sealed envelope. "Everything I found is in here. Zelnar isn't here for a scientific exchange. He's planning to present evidence that Earth's plant life, specifically our spicy foods, represent biological weapons." Sarah's expression shifted from skepticism to concern as she scanned the documents. "This can't be right. Capsaicin is just a chemical irritant. We use it in food." "To them it's deadly," Jack replied. "Their nervous system can't process it. Exposure to concentrated capsaicin would be like nerve gas to a crystallian." Sarah looked up from the papers. "But why announce it? Why not keep it secret if it's such a threat?" Jack's eyes hardened. "Because tomorrow at the Interstellar Botanical Summit, Zelnar is going to recommend Earth be classified as a death world and placed under quarantine. No trade, no cultural exchange, no technology sharing. We'll be isolated from the galactic community before we've properly joined it." "That's insane," Sarah protested. "We can't be quarantined because our food is spicy." "It's happened before," Jack said quietly. "During my last mission, I uncovered evidence that 3 other worlds were classified as threats based on their natural biological compounds. One had a pollen that caused hallucinations in another species. They've been under quarantine for 30 years. Sarah paced the small bathroom, her mind racing. "We need to bring this to Director Harrington immediately." Jack shook his head. "With what evidence, classified files I stole using forged credentials, I'd be arrested before I finish my explanation. And you'd lose your career for helping me." "Then what do you suggest?" A slow smile spread across Jack's weathered face. "We give Professor Zelnar a proper introduction to Earth cuisine." The maintenance tunnels led to every part of the embassy, including the private quarters prepared for distinguished alien visitors. Jack moved through them with practiced ease, carrying a small toolkit and a maintenance order he'd forged for environmental systems calibration. The Crystallian delegation wouldn't arrive for another 3 hours. Plenty of time to place the passive monitoring devices he'd constructed from repurposed embassy equipment. As he worked, Jack's mind drifted back to his last active mission, the one that had ended his career and sent him into this exile of mops and maintenance orders. Peru 2065. The rainforest closed around them like a living thing, hot and breathing. Captain Jack Reynolds led his 4-man team through the undergrowth, and their movements silent despite the dense vegetation. Intelligence had identified unusual activity around a remote farm that specialized in growing rare pepper varieties, specifically those breaking world records for capsaicin content. "Remind me again why Special Forces is investigating a pepper farm," Lieutenant Martinez whispered as they established their observation post. "Because 3 agricultural researchers disappeared after reporting unusual equipment being installed by foreign interests," Jack replied, adjusting his binoculars. And because that farm just happens to sit on what used to be a classified research station from the Cold War. Through his binoculars, Jack could see the farm's main compound. Workers moved between rows of carefully tended plants, but their movements seemed oddly ritualized, mechanical. "Those aren't farm workers," Sergeant Wilson muttered. "Wrong body language. Those are soldiers trying to act like civilians." Jack nodded in agreement. 20 years in special forces had taught him to read people's movements. These farmers were military, but whose military remained unclear. As darkness fell, the team observed strange lights moving through the pepper fields. The workers had deployed what appeared to be advanced harvesting equipment, but it collected only certain peppers, leaving others untouched. "Captain, you need to see this," Wilson whispered, handing over his thermal imaging device. The image made no sense. The workers had no heat signatures. None. Where human form should have shown bright orange-red, there were only cool blue voids in roughly human shape. "What the hell?" Jack murmured. That's when the shooting started. The memory fractured. Here flashes of muzzle fire, Martinez falling with a sound no human throat should make. The strange weapons that fired no bullets, but left Wilson and Rodriguez convulsing on the ground, their skin crystallizing from the points of impact. Jack remembered firing his weapon, the strange satisfaction of seeing one of the farmers shatter like glass when struck. He remembered running the jungle, a blur around him, the strange lights pursuing. He remembered the burning pain when something struck his back and the desperate instinctive move that saved his life. He had fallen into the pepper processing area, his wounded body crushing dozens of the world's hottest peppers. The concentrated capsaicin extract had covered his skin, entered the wound. The pain had been excruciating, but when the lights found him, they had retreated immediately as if repelled. The capsaicin had saved him somehow, creating a barrier the pursuers wouldn't cross. 3 days later, when the extraction team finally found him delirious with pain and infection, his story of glass men and lights that hunt had been attributed to trauma and fever dreams. The official report listed a terrorist organization as responsible. His team members' strange crystallized remains had been classified, their families told lies about heroic deaths. And Captain Jack Reynolds, with his wild tales and deteriorating mental state, had been quietly retired and forgotten, just another broken soldier with impossible stories. Until now. The memory faded as Jack finished installing the last monitoring device in Zelnar's quarters. The past and present were connecting in ways he couldn't yet fully understand, but one thing was becoming clear. The visitors from the stars had been interested in Earth's spicy plants long before official first contact, and Jack Reynolds might be the only person alive who knew the truth. The Crystallian delegation arrived with the formal ceremony befitting representatives of one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations. Earth officials lined the embassy's grand entrance hall, their faces carefully composed to hide any discomfort at the alien's unsettling appearance. From his position near a service entrance, Jack watched Professor Zelnar emerge from the transport. The alien stood 7 feet tall, his crystalline body refracting light in complex patterns that seemed to shift with his emotional state. 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on what humans would consider a face moved independently, scanning the room with clinical precision. Distinguished representatives of Earth. Zelnar's translator device projected his words with perfect clarity. "We bring greetings from the Crystallian Consensus. Our delegation looks forward to sharing botanical knowledge for mutual benefit." Jack studied the alien's body language, looking for signs that might betray his true intentions. The subtle shifts in Zelnar's light patterns suggested tension beneath the diplomatic veneer. The formal greetings continued for 20 minutes before the delegation was escorted to their quarters. Jack returned to his maintenance duties, mopping floors that didn't need cleaning, changing light fixtures that worked perfectly, all while observing and waiting. His patience was rewarded 3 hours later when his monitoring devices picked up their first significant conversation. Through his modified maintenance tablet, Jack listened as Zelnar addressed another Crystallian in their private chambers. "The samples are secured?" Zelnar asked. "Yes, Professor," came the reply. "The capsaicin extracts from all 7 terrestrial varieties have been isolated and prepared for tomorrow's demonstration." "Excellent. The Galactic Council must understand the threat these compounds pose. When they see how capsaicin affects our cellular structure, they will have no choice but to classify Earth as a restricted death world." Jack's jaw tightened as his suspicions were confirmed. Zelnar planned to use his own reaction to capsaicin as evidence that Earth harbored biological weapons. What the conversation didn't explain was why. Why was Zelnar so determined to see Earth quarantined? What would the Crystallians gain from Earth's isolation? These questions would have to wait. Right now, Jack needed to find Sarah and formulate a counterplan. Sarah's laboratory was tucked away in the embassy's west wing, a space filled with plants from 24 worlds. Here, Earth vegetation grew alongside alien specimens, part of her ongoing research into cross-species botanical compatibility. Jack found her examining a crystalline structure that resembled a plant, but seemed to be growing through and around a normal Earth succulent. "Your alien friend is planning his move for tomorrow," Jack said without preamble, closing the door behind him. Sarah looked up from her work, her face showing the strain of processing everything she'd learned. "I've been reviewing those files you gave me. It's incredible capsaicin really is toxic to their system. Their neural pathways crystallize on contact, which is why Zelnar wants Earth classified as dangerous." As Jack nodded, but something doesn't add up. Why expose himself to the very substance he claims is deadly? Why not send samples back to his world for testing? Sarah removed her lab gloves, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "You're right, it's almost like he wants to trigger a reaction, like he's planning to become evidence." Jack's military mind, honed by decades of identifying patterns in enemy behavior, began connecting dots. Or like someone wants him to become evidence. What do you mean? In the intelligence world, when someone acts against their own interests, there are usually only three explanations: they're being coerced, they're creating a distraction, or they're not who they claim to be. Jack began pacing the lab, his thoughts racing. "We need to know which it is before we can counter effectively." Sarah leaned against her workbench. "How do we do that? We can't exactly invite him for an interrogation over coffee." A slow smile spread across Jack's face. "No, but we can invite him to dinner." The plan formed quickly. Sarah, as a xenobiologist, would invite Zelnar to a cultural exchange dinner, an opportunity to experience Earth cuisine specially prepared to accommodate alien biology. "Can you cook?" Sarah asked somewhat doubtfully. Jack's smile widened. "4 years as a field survival instructor. I can make MREs taste good, which is practically a miracle. But more importantly, I spent 3 years undercover in Thailand and Vietnam. I know spicy food better than most chefs." The bigger challenge would be getting authorization for such a dinner on short notice. Fortunately, Sarah's department head was eager to promote cultural exchanges with the visiting delegation. "I'll handle the official channels," Sarah assured him. "You focus on the menu, something impressive but not immediately threatening. We need to establish trust before we confront him." Jack nodded. "I know just the approach. We'll start mild and work our way up. If Zelnar is being honest about the danger, he'll show signs of distress early. If he's exaggerating for effect, then we'll know he has another agenda," Sarah finished. As they finalized the details, a thought occurred to Jack. "There's one more thing: we need a neutral location. Somewhere not under embassy surveillance." Sarah considered this. "My apartment is off-site. Embassy security doesn't monitor it." "Perfect," Jack said. "Tonight we'll discover whether our alien visitor is a genuine scientist or something else entirely." Sarah Chen's apartment reflected her scientific precision and aesthetic sensibility. Located 10 miles from the embassy in a secure diplomatic housing complex, it offered both privacy and the specialized environmental controls that allowed her to continue her botanical research at home. Jack arrived early, arms loaded with grocery bags containing ingredients both familiar and exotic. By the time Sarah returned with Professor Zelnar, the apartment was filled with the aroma of carefully prepared dishes from around the world, all modified to test their theories about crystalline sensitivity. "Professor Zelnar, this is Jack Reynolds." Sarah introduced them. "He's an Earth cuisine specialist I've asked to help with tonight's cultural exchange." Jack, now dressed in civilian clothes rather than his maintenance uniform, extended his hand in greeting. "An honor to meet you, Professor. I prepared a sampling of Earth's diverse culinary traditions, carefully selected to be compatible with crystalline biology." Zelnar's three eyes focused on Jack with an intensity that suggested recognition. Had the aliens seen him at the embassy, or was there some older connection? Neither was acknowledging. "The honor is mine," Zelnar's translator conveyed. "I must admit I have been cautious about sampling Earth food given my research into certain compounds found in your plants. We're well aware of capsaicin sensitivity, Jack replied smoothly. Everything I've prepared tonight is capsaicin-free. Your comfort and safety are our priority. A subtle shift in Zelnar's crystalline patterns, something like relief, perhaps suggested the alien believed him. The dinner began with mild dishes specialized adaptations of Mediterranean cuisine, followed by modified Japanese preparations that emphasized umami rather than heat. Jack observed Zelnar carefully noting how the alien consumed food, absorbing nutrients through specialized crystalline structures rather than eating in the human sense. As the evening progressed, the conversation turned to botanical research. Zelnar proved to be genuinely knowledgeable, his passion for xenobotany evident as he discussed the evolutionary strategies of plants across different worlds. The fascinating aspect of Earth vegetation, Zelnar explained, is its defensive chemical diversity. Most worlds develop 2 or 3 primary defense compounds. Earth has developed dozens, perhaps hundreds. Is that why you're studying capsaicin specifically? Sarah asked, carefully steering the conversation. Zelnar's crystalline form dimmed slightly, a sign of caution. Capsaicin represents an unusual evolutionary strategy. The plant produces a compound that mammals find painful but not lethal, deterring consumption while ensuring seed dispersal. For species like mine, however, it's deadly, Jack finished. Or so your research suggests. The alien's eyes focused on Jack with renewed intensity. You seem well informed for a cuisine specialist. The tension in the room thickened. Jack maintained eye contact, his expression neutral but challenging. Perhaps, Sarah intervened smoothly, we should move to the final course. I've been particularly looking forward to introducing you to Earth's fruit diversity. The dessert course provided the opening they needed. As Zelnar consumed a specially prepared fruit preparation, Jack casually mentioned tomorrow's botanical summit should be fascinating. I understand you're presenting research on cross-species compatibility. Indeed, Zelnar replied. My presentation will highlight compounds that require special handling protocols. Including capsaicin, Sarah asked. Especially capsaicin, Zelnar confirmed. Its effects on my species must be documented to prevent accidental exposure. Jack leaned forward. And would this documentation result in trade restrictions, quarantine protocols, classification of Earth as a death world? The alien went completely still, his crystalline form ceasing all movement. For several long seconds, no one spoke. Finally, Zelnar's translator crackled to life. You are not a cuisine specialist. No, Jack admitted, I'm not. Who are you then? Someone who knows you're planning to use your presentation tomorrow to convince the Galactic Council that Earth should be isolated. Someone who's seen your kind before 20 years ago at a pepper farm in Peru. Zelnar's form flickered with patterns Jack couldn't interpret. Peru. You were there. You survived. I survived, Jack confirmed. And I've spent 20 years wondering what your people wanted with Earth's hottest peppers. The alien's next words changed everything. Not my people, Zelnar said quietly. The Vraxian Dominion. They're the ones who want your world isolated. They're the ones who forced me to prepare this presentation. Forced you, Sarah asked. How? My family, Zelnar replied, his form dimming to a dull glow. They are holding my family hostage. If I do not convince the council to quarantine Earth, they will. The translator fell silent, unable to convey the alien concept of grief. Jack and Sarah exchanged looks. This was an unexpected development. Why do these Vraxians want Earth isolated? Jack asked. Zelnar's 3 eyes focused on something distant. Because they fear you. Because in all their conquests across 17 star systems, they have never encountered a species that produces compounds like capsaicin compounds that affect them even more severely than they affect my kind. You're saying, Sarah clarified, that capsaicin is even deadlier to Vraxians than to crystallians. Exponentially so, Zelnar confirmed. To my people, concentrated capsaicin causes neural crystallization painful but survivable with treatment. To Vraxians, even trace amounts cause complete neural cascade failure. Death within seconds. Jack sat back processing this information. So Earth's ordinary cooking spices are the most powerful weapon in the galaxy against these Vraxians. And they want to ensure you never discover this fact, Zelnar added. By having Earth classified as dangerous, they prevent any official contact that might reveal their weakness. They maintain their reputation as unstoppable conquerors while neutralizing a potential threat. The three sat in silence, the implications of this revelation settling over them. Finally, Jack spoke. "We need to stop your presentation tomorrow and expose the truth instead." "Impossible," Zelnar's translator conveyed despair. "The Vraxians have agents at the embassy. They're monitoring me. If I deviate from their script, my family dies." Sarah reached out instinctively, her hand hovering near Zelnar's crystalline form in a gesture of compassion. "There has to be a way to save both Earth and your family." Jack's military mind was already calculating possibilities, strategies, contingencies. "There is, but first we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Tell us everything about these Vraxians, their weaknesses, their representatives at the embassy, their plans." As Zelnar began revealing details of the Vraxian plot, Jack felt an old familiar sensation, the focused clarity that came before combat. After 20 years of pushing mops and changing light bulbs, Colonel Jack Reynolds was preparing for battle once more. And this time his weapons would include the contents of every spice cabinet on Earth. The first light of dawn found Jack Reynolds where few would expect him, in the embassy kitchen, surrounded by an arsenal of the world's most formidable peppers. His weathered hands moved with practiced precision, grinding dried ghost peppers into a fine powder. Nearby, a sealed container held an extract so potent it required hazard warnings, pure capsaicin concentrated enough to bring a grown man to his knees with a single drop. For 20 years, Jack had maintained his cover by becoming invisible. Today, he would be anything but. Sarah arrived at 0600 hours, her face tight with tension. Zelnar's quarters are under surveillance. 2 diplomatic aides arrived overnight. They haven't left his side. "Vraxian agents," Jack confirmed, not looking up from his work, "disguised as minor officials from the Proxima delegation." Sarah watched as he carefully transferred the ghost pepper powder into small, innocuous-looking containers. "Are you sure about this plan? If you're caught with those substances near the Crystallian delegation—" "I spent 15 years conducting operations behind enemy lines," Jack replied, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of a man who had faced death too many times to fear it. "I wasn't always a janitor, Dr. Chen." Her expression softened. "No, I suppose you weren't?" The embassy was already buzzing with activity when they arrived separately, Sarah through the main entrance, Jack through the service door he had used every day for 5 years. The Botanical Summit would begin in 3 hours, with delegates from 27 worlds gathering to discuss interstellar agricultural exchange and unwittingly decide Earth's fate in the galactic community. Jack resumed his maintenance routine, pushing his cart through corridors he knew better than anyone. His eyes cataloged security positions, delegate movements, potential choke points. The embassy had become his battlefield, each mundane detail potentially crucial to the mission ahead. As he replaced light fixtures in the East Corridor, his earpiece, disguised as a standard maintenance headset, crackled to life. "Colonel," Sarah's voice came through tight with urgency, "we have a problem. They've moved Zelnar's presentation to the first session. We've lost 3 hours of prep time." Jack's expression never changed as he continued working on the light fixture. "Understood. Accelerate timeline to Phase 2. Confirm package delivery to Location Alpha." "Confirmed," Sarah replied, "but the Vraxian agents will be handled." Jack finished, his voice carrying the same tone he might use to discuss changing a filter. "Maintain your position, Doctor." Reynolds out. The corridor emptied as staff hurried toward the summit's opening ceremony. Once alone, Jack moved swiftly, abandoning his maintenance cart and retrieving a small package hidden beneath it. Inside was a security badge cloned from the embassy's head of security during a routine equipment check of his office. High-level access would buy him 15 minutes before the system detected the duplicate credentials. It would be enough. The Security Monitoring Center occupied a reinforced section of the embassy's lower level. 2 guards, young men with military backgrounds but civilian complacency, monitored the array of screens displaying feeds from throughout the facility. Neither looked up as Jack entered his cloned badge, granting him access without question. "System maintenance," Jack announced, holding up a tablet displaying official-looking diagnostic software. "Director Harrington authorized an emergency sweep after those glitches in the East Wing." The senior guard nodded without interest. Both had seen the maintenance worker around for years, just another fixture in the embassy landscape, as noteworthy as the potted plants in the atrium. Take Station 3, the guard directed, pointing to an auxiliary console. Main systems need to stay online during the summit. Jack nodded his thanks and settled at the indicated workstation. His fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, accessing the secure feeds that monitored the Crystallian quarters. On screen, Zelnar stood rigidly while two humanoid figures loomed nearby, the diplomatic aides from Proxima Centauri. To the untrained eye, the Proxima representatives appeared human, with slight cosmetic differences, their skin carrying a bluish tinge attributed to their home world's atmospheric conditions. But Jack recognized the subtle signs, the too perfect posture, the unnaturally fluid movements, the eyes that blinked with mechanical precision. The Varaxians were skilled infiltrators, capable of modifying their external appearance to mimic other species. Their true form remained classified in Earth's limited xenobiological databases, but Jack had glimpsed it 20 years ago in that Peruvian jungle, an image that still haunted his dreams. Ambassador Zelnar will stick to the approved presentation. One of the disguised Varaxians was saying, its voice carrying the too perfect cadence of advanced translation technology. Any deviation will result in immediate consequences for your family unit. Zelnar's crystalline form dimmed in what Jack recognized as resignation. I understand. The capsaicin demonstration will proceed as planned. The Varaxian agent held up a small device. This transmitter maintains real-time connection with our vessel. The moment you deviate from the script, the signal changes. You will not see your family again. Jack's jaw tightened as he captured and archived the footage. Evidence of coercion would be crucial later if their plan succeeded. With practiced keystrokes, he initiated a subsystem diagnostic that would temporarily loop the security feeds from the Crystallian quarters, masking any activity there for the next 20 minutes. To the monitoring guards, nothing would appear amiss. System running slow today, Jack commented casually as he rose from the workstation. Might need to extend the diagnostic. I'll check the hardware nodes in Section 5 and report back. The guards, already returning their attention to their personal devices during the routine diplomatic proceedings, merely nodded. In the corridor, Jack activated his earpiece. Security feeds looped. Varaxians confirmed armed and actively threatening Zelnar's family. Moving to Phase 3, Sarah's voice came back immediately. Colonel, you need to see this. Central Database Xenobiology section. I've just found something about Project Cayenne. Jack froze mid-stride. Project Cayenne, the classified operation that had sent his team to Peru 20 years ago. The mission that had ended his career and haunted his dreams. On my way, he replied, his voice betraying none of the emotions churning beneath his calm exterior. As he moved through the embassy's service corridors, Jack's mind raced through contingencies. The Varaxians were more deeply embedded than they had anticipated. The stakes had just gotten higher and more personal. The embassy's research library stood empty during the summit's opening session, its vast digital archives humming quietly in the dim light. Sarah waited at a workstation in the farthest corner, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the holographic display. What did you find? Jack asked without preamble as he approached. Sarah's fingers danced across the interface, pulling up classified files that should have been inaccessible to her clearance level. I was researching capsaicin effects on various alien physiologies when I found these access restrictions. The system blocked me, but there was a reference code I recognized from the papers you showed me. How did you get past the security protocols? Jack asked, impressed despite the urgency of their situation. Sarah gave him a tight smile. I may have mentioned that my father worked for the NSA's cryptography division before he disappeared. He taught me a few tricks. The display shifted, revealing heavily redacted documents bearing familiar classification markers Jack hadn't seen since his active service days. Project Cayenne, Sarah said quietly, officially described as assessment of agricultural compounds for defensive applications in xenobiological contexts. But look at the dates. Jack leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. 2063, 2 years before first contact. Exactly. Sarah nodded. Our government was studying capsaicin as a weapon against aliens before we officially knew aliens existed. Jack's expression darkened as more pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. My team wasn't sent to investigate unknown foreign interests at that pepper farm. We were sent to protect an ongoing black operation, one that was already experimenting with capsaicin against alien biology. Sarah pulled up another document. There's more. Project Cayenne didn't end after your mission failed. It expanded. Look at the principal researcher assigned in 2066. The name on the screen hit Jack like a physical blow, Dr. David Chen. Your father, he breathed. Sarah nodded, her professional composure cracking slightly. He vanished in 2070 right before the official first contact preparations began. The official story was that he had a mental breakdown, destroyed his research, and disappeared. I was 20 at the time, just starting my undergraduate studies. Jack's military mind rapidly processed this new information. Your father discovered something they wanted, hidden something about capsaicin the Vraxians, or both. And now these same aliens are threatening Zelnar to prevent Earth from learning about capsaicin's effect on their species, Sarah concluded. This isn't just about quarantining Earth. There's something big happening. Jack straightened, his decision made. We need to find your father. If he's alive, he knows the truth about Project Cayenne and potentially how to neutralize the Vraxian threat without endangering Zelnar's family. Sarah's eyes widened. You think he's still alive? After 15 years? In my experience, Doctor, when people with crucial information disappear rather than turn up dead, it usually means someone is keeping them alive for a reason. Jack's expression was grim but determined. But first we need to stop that presentation and secure Zelnar. We have, he checked his watch, 53 minutes until he takes the stage. As they prepared to leave, a final document caught Jack's eye, a personnel file with his own name at the top. He paused, scanning the contents with growing disbelief. What is it? Sarah asked, noting his expression. Jack's voice was tight with controlled anger. According to this, I wasn't retired because they thought I was delusional after Peru. I was removed because I saw something I wasn't supposed to see, and someone very high up decided I knew too much to remain in service, but was too valuable to eliminate. So they hid you in plain sight, Sarah realized. A decorated Special Forces colonel reduced to mopping floors at the very embassy where aliens would eventually arrive. They kept you where they could watch you. Jack's weathered face hardened with renewed purpose. For 20 years I've been invisible, the old janitor everyone ignores. Time to remind them why that was a mistake. The embassy's grand ballroom had been transformed for the Botanical Summit, with specialized environmental stations accommodating the diverse biological needs of the attending species. Holographic displays showcased spectacular plant specimens from 24 worlds, while Earth's finest botanical achievements from ancient sequoias to gene-modified, drought-resistant wheat held places of honor at the center. From his position near a service entrance, Jack observed the gathering delegates. His trained eye identified security personnel, noted exit routes, and cataloged potential assets and threats. Most importantly, he located the Vraxian agents, still in their Proxima Centauri disguises, flanking Zelnar near the presentation stage. Targets located, he murmured into his concealed communicator. 2 Vraxian operatives maintaining proximity to the primary asset. They're carrying concealed devices, likely the transmitter linked to their ship. Sarah's voice came through clearly. I'm in position at the technical station. I can control the presentation systems when you give the signal. Jack's plan was necessarily simple, the best ones usually were. Create a distraction. Separate Zelnar from his Vraxian handlers, neutralize the threat, and prevent the presentation from proceeding as planned. The execution, however, would require perfect timing and a fair amount of luck. He was about to move when a new figure entered the ballroom, causing him to freeze in place. Director Elizabeth Harrington, head of Interstellar Diplomatic Security, swept into the room, surrounded by her personal detail. Her calculating gaze surveyed the assembled delegates with professional detachment until it landed on Jack. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the crowded room. Something flickered across her face, recognition, surprise, and perhaps a touch of alarm. Then her expression smoothed into diplomatic neutrality as she turned to greet an approaching alien dignitary. We've been compromised, Jack said quietly into his communicator. Director Harrington made me accelerate timeline. Without waiting for a response, he abandoned his position and moved smoothly through the service corridors toward the staging area behind the presentation platform. The maintenance uniform that had rendered him invisible for years now served as his perfect disguise, allowing him to pass through restricted areas with nothing more than a nod to security personnel. Behind the stage, technical staff hurried to prepare the sophisticated presentation systems. Jack blended in seamlessly, pushing a cart loaded with cleaning supplies and several inconspicuous containers. Environmental systems check, he announced to the harried technician managing the atmospheric controls. We're getting strange readings from the crystalline adaptation module. The young technician barely glanced up from his console. Can it wait? We're 5 minutes from the opening presentation. Jack shook his head gravely. Oxygen crystallization ratios are fluctuating. Could cause respiratory distress for the crystalline delegation if not addressed immediately. That got the technician's attention. An environmental failure affecting a prominent alien delegation could end careers. Fine, check it quickly, but don't touch any of the primary systems without clearing it with me first. Jack nodded and moved to the environmental control unit, positioning himself with a clear line of sight to where Zelnar would enter for his presentation. As he pretended to run diagnostics, he carefully unsealed one of his special containers, releasing an odorless compound into the ventilation system, a compound that would be completely harmless to humans and most aliens, but would create mild discomfort for beings with crystalline biology. Enough discomfort to necessitate a brief recess if all went according to plan. His earpiece crackled. Colonel Sarah's voice was tight with urgency. We have another problem. Armed security just entered through the east access points. They're not regular embassy personnel. Jack's expression remained neutral as he continued his work, but his mind raced through the implications. Description: private contractors, military bearing, full tactical gear disguised as formal wear. They're positioning near all exits. Jack had seen such teams before: elite private security, usually ex-special forces, hired when official channels needed deniable assets for sensitive operations. Someone else knows what's happening, he concluded. Either they're here for the Vraxians, or they're here for us, Sarah finished. The technician approached, interrupting their communication. Are you done yet? They're about to begin. Just finishing, Jack assured him, closing his diagnostic panel while leaving the compound to do its work. All set. Should be stable now. As he pushed his cart toward the exit, the summit's moderator began the official welcome. Jack paused, watching as Zelnar was escorted to the side stage by his Vraxian handlers, ready to deliver the presentation that could isolate Earth from the galactic community. Then, exactly as calculated, the environmental system began dispersing the compound throughout the presentation area. Jack observed with satisfaction as Zelnar's crystalline form flickered with subtle signs of discomfort, noticeable only to someone who knew what to look for. Right on cue, Sarah's voice came through the audio system. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored delegates, we appear to be experiencing some minor environmental calibration issues. We will need to take a brief 15-minute recess to ensure optimal conditions for all species present. Please enjoy refreshments in the adjacent atrium. The confused murmuring of the delegates was quickly organized by embassy staff, who efficiently directed everyone toward the atrium. In the controlled chaos, Jack moved swiftly toward Zelnar and his handlers. Professor Zelnar, he called out, approaching with an official-looking tablet. Environmental Systems is detecting crystallization anomalies in your immediate area. Please come with me for emergency recalibration. The Vraxian agent stiffened, one stepping forward to intercept. The ambassador is fine. He will remain with us. Jack maintained his maintenance worker persona, appearing apologetic but firm. I understand, sir, but safety protocols are mandatory. Crystalline respiratory function shows potential distress patterns. Director Harrington has authorized emergency protocols. He held up his tablet, showing complex technical readings, actually a sophisticated loop of meaningless data. The mention of Harrington gave the Vraxians pause, just enough for Zelnar to speak up, playing his part perfectly. I am experiencing some discomfort, the Crystallian admitted, his translator conveying distress. Perhaps I should have my environmental settings checked. Before the Vraxians could object further, Jack smoothly guided Zelnar toward a service corridor, speaking loudly about specialized calibration equipment and crystalline respiratory optimization. As they turned the corner, he caught sight of the Vraxian agents following at a distance, their faces showing the first cracks in their human disguises. The hunt had begun. The service corridor stretched before them, a utilitarian contrast to the embassy's public grandeur. Jack moved with purpose, guiding Zelnar toward the predetermined rendezvous point where Sarah waited. Their following, Zelnar's translator, conveyed his anxiety. The transmitter. If they activate it, they won't get the chance, Jack assured him, his voice carrying the calm confidence that had steadied countless soldiers in combat zones. Just 3 more turns, then we're clear. As they rounded the second corner, Jack's instincts screamed a warning. He pulled Zelnar back just as 2 figures stepped into view. Private security contractors, their formal attire failing to hide their military bearing. Colonel Reynolds, the lead contractor, greeted him with cold professionalism. Director Harrington requests your immediate presence. Please surrender the alien ambassador and come with us. Jack assessed his options in milliseconds. 2 armed professionals in a confined space. Minimal cover. An alien diplomat to protect. Less than ideal. Afraid I can't do that, Jack replied evenly. The professor and I have an important meeting regarding Earth's botanical defense capabilities. The security contractors exchanged glances, their hands moving subtly toward concealed weapons. Colonel, we have authorization to use necessary force. Don't make this difficult. Jack's posture shifted almost imperceptibly, a change only another combat veteran would recognize as preparation for violence. Who authorized this operation? Because I'm pretty sure Director Harrington wouldn't risk an interstellar incident by detaining a diplomatic guest. The lead contractor's expression hardened. Final warning, Colonel. Hand over the alien. In the split second before chaos erupted, Jack's earpiece crackled to life, Sarah's voice tight with urgency. Colonel, the contractors aren't with Harrington. They're working for someone else inside the government and trust no one. The warning confirmed what Jack had already suspected. These men weren't embassy security. They were operating under different orders from someone with access to his classified history. Professor, Jack said calmly, I apologize in advance for the human violence you're about to witness. What happened next unfolded with the brutal efficiency that had once made Colonel Jack Reynolds legendary within Special Forces circles. Despite his 65 years, decades of daily physical discipline had maintained his combat readiness. The first contractor never completed his draw. Jack's maintenance cart slammed into him with precisely calculated force, pinning him momentarily against the wall. The second man managed to pull his weapon only to have it knocked from his grasp by a fire extinguisher. Jack tore from the wall in the same fluid motion. The confined space worked to Jack's advantage, limiting the contractor's ability to maneuver or bring their superior numbers to bear. His movements were economical, targeting vulnerable points with the precision of a man who had spent decades studying the human body's weaknesses. Within 12 seconds, both contractors lay unconscious on the corridor floor. That was most efficient, Zellner's translator conveyed his astonishment. Jack was already searching the contractors, retrieving their weapons and communications devices. Old habits, he muttered. Come on, we need to move. There'll be more. They continued through the service corridors at a faster pace, Jack now openly carrying a contractor's sidearm. His earpiece crackled again. Colonel, I've found something. Sarah's voice was tight with controlled excitement. The transmitter the Vraxians are using to threaten Zelnar's family, it's not connecting to their ship. It's routing through the embassy's own communication array. Jack processed this information as they moved. They're bluffing. They don't have direct contact with Zelnar's family. It gets better, Sarah continued. I've traced the signal. It's not going off planet at all. It's transmitting to a facility outside Santa Fe, about 40 miles from here. Jack's steps faltered momentarily as the implications hit him. They don't have Zelnar's family. They never did. I believe that is incorrect, Zelnar interjected, his translator, failing to fully convey his emotion. My family was taken 3 cycles ago from our research outpost. The Vraxians showed me proof of capture. They showed you something, Jack reflected. But if the signal is going to Santa Fe instead of their ship, he didn't need to finish the thought. Either the Vraxians had Zelnar's family imprisoned on Earth, an almost impossible logistical feat, or they had fabricated the entire hostage situation. We need to find that facility, Jack decided. If your family is there, we'll get them out. If not, we'll find evidence of whatever the Vraxians are really planning. They reached a maintenance access point where Sarah waited, her face tight with tension. The summit's resuming in 7 minutes. The Vraxians are searching the entire embassy, and they've told security you've abducted Zelnar. Jack's expression darkened. Of course they have. Perfect cover for when they can't produce him for the presentation. He turned to the Crystallian scientist. Professor, we need to get you somewhere safe while we investigate this signal. No. Zelnar's translator conveyed determination. If there yet is any chance my family is being held at this facility, I must go with you. Jack assessed the alien with newfound respect. Despite his scientific appearance, Zelnar possessed the courage of a warrior when it came to his family. It'll be dangerous, Jack warned. I am familiar with danger, Colonel, Zelnar replied, and I have seen your combat efficiency. The decision made Jack turn to Sarah. We need transportation and a direct route to that facility, and we need to disappear before those Vraxian agents, or more contractors, find us. Sarah held up a key fob. My research vehicle has diplomatic clearance and specialized environmental controls for transporting alien botanical samples. For the first time that day, Jack allowed himself a small smile. Dr. Chen and you continue to impress. He checked the contractor's weapon, ensuring it was ready. Let's move. We have a family to find and an invasion to stop. As they prepared to leave, Zelnar's crystalline form pulsed with a pattern Jack had not seen before. Colonel Reynolds, the alien said quietly, before we proceed, there is something you should know about Project Cayenne and Dr. Chen's research. Jack and Sarah both turned to him, instantly alert. I was there, Zelnar continued, in Peru 20 years ago. Not as your enemy, but as an observer sent to assess the Vraxian threat to both our worlds. Dr. Chen was not researching weapons, he was developing a defense against Vraxian infiltration. And he succeeded. Sarah stepped forward. My father found a way to detect Vraxians. More than detect, Zelnar's translator conveyed with perfect clarity. He found a way to force them to reveal their true form. The compound he synthesized, derived from capsaicin, but molecularly enhanced, disrupts their mimetic cellular structure. They feared his discovery more than any weapon. Jack's mind raced with the implications. That's why they made him disappear. That's what this has all been about, preventing Earth from discovering their vulnerability. And if my family truly is at this facility, Zelnar began, then your family is being held where Dr. Chen might be as well, Jack finished. The Vraxians would keep their two biggest threats together, Zelnar's family to control him and Dr. Chen to prevent his research from being completed. Sarah's expression hardened with determination. Then we need to hurry. The summit will be in chaos soon when you don't deliver your presentation. Jack checked his watch, his military mind calculating timelines and contingencies. We have approximately 20 minutes before the embassy locks down completely. Let's make them count. As they moved toward the exit, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced in 20 years, the clarity of purpose that came with a mission worth fighting for. Colonel Jack Reynolds, the forgotten soldier, had found his final battlefield, and this time the stakes were higher than just one planet's fate. Sarah's research vehicle sped through the New Mexico desert, its specialized environmental systems maintaining perfect conditions for its unusual passengers. Jack sat in the passenger seat, the contractor's weapon resting across his knees, while Zelnar occupied the modified rear compartment designed for transporting alien botanical specimens. The facility's coordinates led them away from Santa Fe proper toward a remote area surrounded by government land officially designated as a weather research station. As they approached, Jack studied the perimeter through high-powered binoculars. Minimal visible security, he noted. 2 guard posts, standard fencing. Nothing that screams secret alien prison. That is consistent with Vraxian methodology, Zelnar offered from the back. They prefer to hide in plain sight using existing infrastructure rather than building distinctive facilities. Sarah slowed the vehicle as they reached a viewpoint overlooking the complex. How do we get in? We can't exactly drive up to the front gate. Jack continued his assessment. The light security suggests confidence in their anonymity, not their defensive capabilities. They're not expecting trouble. He lowered the binoculars. We'll approach from the eastern perimeter where that ridge provides cover. There's a maintenance access point there, likely connects to underground systems. As they prepared to move closer, Jack's confiscated security radio crackled to life. He had tuned it to the embassy's emergency channel before leaving, expecting it might provide useful intelligence. All units be advised. The clipped professional voice of Director Harrington came through clearly. Priority alert for 3 suspects in possible abduction of Crystallian Ambassador Zelnar. Suspects are armed and dangerous. Primary suspect identified as Jack Reynolds, former Colonel U.S. Special Forces. Consider extremely dangerous. Jack switched off the radio with a grim expression. Our timeline just accelerated. They've officially branded us as hostage takers. But Director Harrington knows who you are, Sarah pointed out. She recognized you earlier, which means either she's working with the Vraxians, Jack reasoned, or she's following protocol while trying to figure out what's actually happening. Or she has been replaced by a Vraxian infiltrator. Zelnar added his translator, conveying the gravity of this possibility. They typically target authority figures with access to security systems. The implications chilled them all. If Vraxians had infiltrated Earth's diplomatic security at the highest levels, the threat was far greater than they had initially assumed. We proceed as planned, Jack decided, but we assume a shorter operational window. Once we're inside, we have perhaps 30 minutes before a serious response team arrives. Sarah parked the vehicle in a natural depression where it would be hidden from casual observation. As they exited, Jack distributed essential equipment, communication devices, basic tools, and a specially designed environmental regulator for Zelnar. Stay behind me, maintain silence unless absolutely necessary, and follow my hand signals, Jack instructed as he checked the contractor's weapon one final time. His voice and bearing had fully transformed, no longer the unassuming janitor, but the Special Forces commander he had once been. They approached the facility's perimeter under the cover of the ridgeline, moving with careful precision. Jack led them to a point where a drainage culvert passed beneath the fence, standard infrastructure, but large enough for them to pass through with some effort. Typical security oversight, Jack murmured as he inspected the culvert. They focus on the obvious entry points and forget the basic utilities. Inside the drainage system, Jack navigated with the confidence of a man who had studied countless facility blueprints during his military career. Such installations followed predictable patterns. Drainage connected to maintenance tunnels, which led to utility rooms, which provided access to the main facility. After 15 minutes of careful movement, they reached a junction where the drainage pipe connected to a larger maintenance tunnel. Jack helped Sarah and Zelnar climb up, then led them deeper into the facility's substructure. "Listen," Sarah whispered, suddenly stopping them. In the distance, barely audible, came a sound that made Jack's combat-honed senses sharpen instantly, the distinctive crystalline resonance that Zelnar's species produced when communicating without translators. "More of my kind." Zelnar confirmed his own crystalline structure vibrating subtly in response. "They are distressed." "Your family?" Sarah asked hopefully. "I cannot be certain at this distance, but the harmonic patterns are familiar." Zelnar moved forward with new urgency. "We must hurry." Jack raised a hand, stopping him. "We proceed carefully. If your family is here, there will be guards. We need to assess the situation before rushing in." The maintenance tunnel eventually led them to a utility room filled with environmental control equipment. Jack secured the door behind them, then accessed a control panel that displayed a schematic of the facility. "This isn't a weather station," he observed grimly. "These are specialized containment systems designed for non-human biology." Sarah leaned closer to the display. "These readings, they're calibrated for crystalline atmospheric requirements. With one significant modification," Zelnar added, studying the controls. "The oxygen crystallization ratio is deliberately unbalanced enough to cause discomfort without serious harm. A method of control." Jack's expression hardened. "So they are keeping crystallians here." He studied the schematic, identifying the most likely containment area. 3 levels down, east quadrant. Heavy power usage, specialized ventilation. "That's where we'll find them." As they prepared to move out, Sarah grabbed Jack's arm. "Wait, look at this power signature." She pointed to an isolated reading on the far side of the facility. "That's not crystalline environmental support. That's consistent with a level 5 isolation laboratory." Jack and Zelnar both turned to her, understanding the implication immediately. "My father," Sarah whispered, "if he's alive, if they've kept him to work on his research, he would be in a facility like that." A tactical dilemma presented itself: 2 objectives, limited time and increasing risk. Jack made the decision quickly. "We split up," he said, knowing the tactical disadvantage, but seeing no alternative. "I'll secure the crystallians. You two head for the laboratory. Zelnar can identify his family if they're among the captives, and you'll recognize your father." Sarah's scientific detachment slipped slightly as the possibility of finding her long-missing father became real. "Are you sure?" Jack nodded. "I work better alone in combat situations." Take this, he handed her the contractor's sidearm. Standard operations safety disengages with firm pressure. Last resort only. With communication devices synchronized and rendezvous points established, they parted ways at the utility room's secondary exit. Jack moved toward the containment area, while Sarah and Zelnar headed for the mysterious laboratory. The facility's interior proved surprisingly understaffed, another indicator that the Vraxians relied on secrecy rather than security. Jack encountered only 2 guards on his approach to the containment level, both easily avoided by someone with his infiltration experience. As he reached the main containment door, however, he faced a more significant obstacle, a biometric security system requiring authorized personnel access. For most infiltrators, this would pose a serious challenge. For a man who had spent 5 years as invisible maintenance staff in a high-security embassy, it was merely a technical problem to solve. Jack removed a small device from his pocket, a universal security bypass tool he had assembled from components borrowed from the embassy's technical storage over the years. One never knew when such preparations might prove useful. The bypass tool interfaced with the biometric scanner, cycling through algorithm patterns until the security system surrendered with a soft chime. The containment door slid open, revealing a sight that confirmed their worst suspicions. Inside, 12 crystalline beings were held in specialized chambers, their crystalline forms dulled by the deliberately imbalanced atmosphere. They appeared weakened but alive, their three-eyed gazes turning toward Jack with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "I'm here to help," Jack announced, knowing they likely couldn't understand him without translators. He used universal hand gestures for peace and assistance, hoping the intent would translate across species. As he moved through the containment area, assessing the release mechanisms for each chamber, his earpiece crackled to life. "Colonel," Sarah's voice came through tight with controlled emotion. "We found the laboratory, and we found my father." Jack felt a surge of hope. "Alive!" "Yes," she confirmed, her voice breaking slightly. "But there's more, much more. The Vraxians, they're not just infiltrating Earth. They're planning full-scale invasion. My father has been forced to develop hybridized capsaicin-resistant Vraxian soldiers." Before Jack could respond, a new voice came through the communication device, older, weary, but carrying the same intellectual precision as Sarah's. "Colonel Reynolds, Jack Reynolds, from Peru." Dr. David Chen asked, recognition in his voice. "They said you were dead." "Reports of my demise were politically convenient," Jack replied dryly. "Doctor, I need to know, how close are the Vraxians to deploying these resistance soldiers?" "Too close," Chen replied grimly. "They've already infiltrated key positions in Earth's defense and diplomatic infrastructure. The summit today was meant to be the final step. Having Earth classified as a threat would prevent any official contact that might expose their presence." Jack processed this information as he examined the crystalline containment system. "These chambers appear to be centrally controlled. I need to find the main release mechanism." "Colonel," Zelnar's voice joined the conversation, "my family is not among these captives. These are scientists from my research team colleagues who disappeared over the past year." The pieces were falling into place now. The Vraxians had been systematically removing anyone who might identify their weakness to capsaicin or interfere with their infiltration plans. Jack continued while searching for the control system. "Have you completed the capsaicin-based detection compound you were developing in Project Cayenne?" "I sabotaged it repeatedly over the years," Chen replied, pride evident in his voice despite his captivity. "Introduced deliberate flaws that would make the Vraxians believe it was a failed concept. But the actual formula, yes, I perfected it 15 years ago. And it works. It forces Vraxians to reveal their true form." "More than that," Chen confirmed. "Extended exposure prevents them from maintaining any disguise. One treatment in a building's ventilation system would expose every Vraxian infiltrator present." Jack found the main control panel for the containment system and began the release sequence. "Then that's our counterstrike. We need to get that compound to the embassy before the summit concludes." As the crystalline chambers began their opening sequence, a facility-wide alarm suddenly blared. Emergency lights bathed the containment area in pulsing red. Jack's military instincts kicked into high alert. "Status report. What triggered that alarm?" "Not us," Sarah replied, tension evident in her voice. "We're secure in the lab. Father thinks—" Dr. Chen's voice cut in urgently. "They're accelerating the timeline. This facility was never meant to be discovered. They're initiating purge protocols. Meaning, Jack demanded, though he already suspected the answer. They're going to eliminate all evidence, Chen confirmed grimly, including prisoners' research and the facility itself. We have less than 15 minutes before this place is vaporized. Jack watched as the crystalline chambers completed their opening cycle, the weakened aliens struggling to emerge. Change of plans. Everyone converge on the vehicle access bay level 1 west quadrant. We're taking everything and everyone we can. Move now. As he helped the first disoriented Crystallia scientist to its feet, Jack Reynolds, the forgotten soldier who had spent 20 years pushing a mop, prepared for the most important extraction mission of his life. The fate of two worlds now hung in the balance, and the countdown had begun. The facility's alarm system wailed like a wounded animal, its pulsing red emergency lights transforming the sterile corridors into something from a nightmare. Jack Reynolds led the weakened Crystallian scientists through the maze of hallways, his decades of military training allowing him to navigate under pressure while supporting two aliens who could barely stand. 5 minutes to primary detonation sequence, the automated system announced with mechanical calm. All personnel, evacuate immediately. In the distance, Jack heard the unmistakable sound of weapons fire. Someone or something was eliminating witnesses. "Colonel, we're pinned down." Sarah's voice came through his earpiece, the sound of energy weapons discharging in the background. "Two Vraxians in security uniforms blocking our path to the vehicle bay." Jack made a split-second decision. "Get the Crystallians to the emergency stairwell," he instructed the most functional alien scientist, using gestures to reinforce his commands. 3 levels up, then west. Look for the red exit sign." Once the aliens were moving toward relative safety, Jack sprinted toward Sarah's position, his body responding with the muscle memory of countless combat missions. Age might have added a few creaks to his joints, but the disciplined routine he had maintained even during his years of exile kept him combat ready. He found Sarah Zelnar and Dr. Chen pinned behind a laboratory doorway, energy weapons fire scorching the wall across from them. Two figures in security uniforms fired methodically at their position, their movements too precise to be human. Jack assessed the situation with a veteran's eye. The Vraxians had superior position and firepower, but lacked tactical flexibility. They maintained perfect discipline, which meant they followed predictable patterns. From his pocket, Jack retrieved the small container of capsaicin extract he had prepared at the embassy. The concentrated substance, harmless to humans but devastating to Vraxian biology, would serve as his primary weapon. "On my signal," he instructed through the earpiece, "everyone move right toward that cross corridor." Without waiting for acknowledgement, Jack launched into action. He hurled a fire extinguisher down the hallway, its pressurized contents exploding when struck by energy fire. The resulting cloud of chemicals provided just enough cover for Jack to circle behind the Vraxian position. With precision born from decades of close-quarters combat, Jack struck. The capsaicin extract deployed in a fine mist directly into the face of the first Vraxian. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The human disguise began to ripple and distort the creature's true form, struggling to emerge as its mimetic abilities failed catastrophically. A high-pitched keening sound, inaudible to human ears, but painful to Crystallian senses, filled the corridor as the Vraxian's nervous system collapsed. The second Vraxian turned its weapon, tracking toward Jack, but Sarah had used the distraction to emerge from cover. Her shot wasn't precisely aimed, but at close range, it didn't need to be. The energy pulse struck the Vraxian's weapon, causing a feedback surge that left the creature momentarily vulnerable. It was all the opening Jack needed. The second capsaicin dose found its mark, triggering the same horrific transformation in the remaining enemy. "Move," Jack ordered, already heading toward their extraction point. "We have less than 3 minutes." Dr. Chen, despite 15 years of captivity, moved with surprising speed. "The formula," he insisted as they ran. "I managed to hide samples in my laboratory. We need it to expose the infiltrators at the embassy." "No time," Jack began, but Sarah was already doubling back, Zellner at her side. "We'll meet you at the vehicle bay," she called over her shoulder. 30 seconds. Jack wanted to protest. The tactical decision was unsound, but he recognized the determination in Sarah's eyes. The same determination he had seen in soldiers willing to risk everything for mission-critical objectives. He and Dr. Chen continued toward the vehicle bay, collecting the Crystallian scientists along the way. As they reached the loading area, Jack assessed their options. 3 transport vehicles sat ready, standard government SUVs modified for secure prisoner transport. 2 minutes to primary detonation sequence. The automated system reminded them with inhuman serenity. Jack worked quickly, overriding the vehicle's security systems, using techniques that had served him well in hostile territories around the world. As the engine hummed to life, Sarah and Zelnar burst into the bay, clutching a sealed container. "We got it," Sarah announced triumphantly, helping the last Crystallians board as Jack took the driver's position. The facility's main gates were sealed, but Jack had no intention of using conventional exits. He aimed the heavy vehicle directly at the perimeter fence, where his earlier reconnaissance had identified a vulnerable section. "Hold on," he warned, pressing the accelerator to the floor. The powerful engine responded instantly, propelling them toward the fence at increasing speed. The impact was jarring but effective. The reinforced vehicle tore through the fence, bouncing violently as Jack navigated across the uneven terrain beyond. In the rearview mirror, he glimpsed security personnel emerging from the facility, weapons drawn, but too late to stop their escape. They had barely cleared the outer perimeter when the first explosion rocked the complex. The ground shook beneath their wheels as sequential detonations began consuming the facility, destroying all evidence of its existence and nearly taking them with it. That was Dr. Chen searched for words as they sped toward the main highway. "Quite an exit, Colonel." Jack's weathered face remained impassive, but the ghost of a smile touched his eyes. "Just like old times, Doctor." Sarah, checking the Crystallians for injuries, looked up at her father with a mixture of disbelief and joy. "I never stopped looking for you," she said quietly, "even when they told me to accept your disappearance." Chen reached out a hand that showed signs of 15 years of captivity, scarred with slightly crooked fingers that had been broken and improperly healed. "I never doubted you would find me, Sarah. You always were the stubborn one." Their moment of reunion was cut short as Jack's confiscated security radio crackled to life. Director Harrington's voice came through, issuing updated orders. "All units be advised, suspects believed heading towards Santa Fe with hostages. Satellite tracking activated on Dr. Chen's research vehicle. Approach with extreme caution. Reynolds is considered armed and extremely dangerous. Shoot to kill authorization granted." The implications were clear. They were now fugitives being hunted by their own government, which had been thoroughly infiltrated by Vraxian agents. "They don't know we switched vehicles," Jack observed, his tactical mind already plotting their next move. "That gives us a small advantage." "What's our play, Colonel?" Dr. Mao Chen asked, the scientist's analytical mind already working on solutions. Jack checked the time. The Botanical Summit would reconvene within the hour. "We need to get to the embassy before the summit concludes. If Zelnar doesn't make his presentation, the Vraxians will find another way to isolate Earth." He glanced at the container Sarah had retrieved. "And we need to deploy your formula to expose every infiltrator before they realize what's happening." "The embassy will be locked down," Sarah pointed out. "Security will be looking for us at every entrance." A slow, confident smile spread across Jack's face, the smile of a battle-hardened commander with an ace up his sleeve. "There's one thing being invisible for 20 years taught me, Doctor." He made a sharp turn onto a side road, avoiding the main highway where checkpoints would certainly be established. "I know every single way in and out of that embassy that doesn't appear on any official blueprint." As they sped toward the final confrontation, the Crystallians in the back of the vehicle began communicating in their resonant language. Zelnar, listening intently, translated for the humans. "They confirm what we suspected," he reported gravely. "The Vraxians have been systematically eliminating anyone who discovered their capsaicin vulnerability. My colleagues were captured after identifying Vraxian infiltrators within the Crystallian government." "How widespread is this infiltration?" Jack asked, the tactical implications growing more concerning by the minute. "At least 3 major galactic governments have been compromised," Zelnar replied. "Earth was to be their next conquest, isolated by quarantine, then systematically infiltrated at the highest levels." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "They've already made significant progress. I was forced to witness their planning sessions. They have agents in defense departments, space agencies, and diplomatic corps across Earth." Jack's expression hardened with resolve. Then we need to expose them all today before they can activate whatever contingency plans they have in place. The desert landscape blurred around them as they raced toward an embassy now crawling with enemies who wore familiar faces. The final battle for Earth's freedom would be fought not with armies, but with a simple chemical compound derived from humanity's spiciest foods. Colonel Jack Reynolds, the forgotten soldier, the invisible janitor, was about to become Earth's most important warrior once again. The embassy loomed ahead, its gleaming architecture a stark contrast to the New Mexico desert surrounding it. From their vantage point a mile away, Jack studied the facility through binoculars, noting the increased security presence, armed personnel at every entrance, vehicles forming checkpoints on approach roads. They've locked it down tight, he observed, but they're focused on obvious entry points. Beside him, Dr. Chen and Zelnar waited for his assessment. The Crystallian scientists remained in the vehicle, still recovering from their captivity. How do we get inside? Sarah asked, her scientific mind struggling with the tactical challenge before them. Jack lowered the binoculars, his weathered face resolute. The same way I've moved through that building unnoticed for 5 years, the maintenance tunnels. He pointed to a seemingly unremarkable utility building half a mile from the embassy proper. That substation connects to the embassy's power grid. The access tunnel was built during initial construction, then omitted from final blueprints for security reasons. A thin smile touched his lips. Security reasons that became irrelevant when they assigned tunnel maintenance to an invisible janitor. Chen examined the capsaicin-derived formula he had created, now contained in a portable dispersion device Sarah had assembled from laboratory components. Once inside, we need to access the ventilation system. The formula requires 15 minutes of circulation to affect all Vraxians present. The summit reconvenes in 43 minutes. Zelnar noted his crystalline form pulsing with anxiety. If I am not present to deliver my presentation, the Vraxians will implement alternative measures to ensure Earth's isolation. Jack nodded, his military mind calculating timelines and contingencies. Then we move now. Dr. Chen, you and the Crystallian scientists remain here with the vehicle. If we don't return or contact you within 2 hours, take them to this address. He handed Chen a folded paper with coordinates. It's a safe house only I know about. Wait there for further instructions. Chen clasped Jack's shoulder. After 15 years as their prisoner, I'm not sitting this one out, Colonel. His eyes, so like his daughter's, showed the same determination. I watched the Vraxians plan Earth's downfall. I'm going to watch them fail. Jack recognized the resolve of a man who had endured too much to be sidelined now. He nodded once, respecting the decision. Stay close to Sarah. Follow my instructions precisely. With the infiltration team selected, Jack, Sarah, Dr. Chen, and Zelnar, they moved toward the utility building, using natural terrain for cover. The others would remain with the vehicle, ready to evacuate if necessary. The utility building's security proved minimal, a single electronic lock that yielded easily to Jack's maintenance override codes. Inside, amid transformers and switching equipment, Jack located the access panel concealed behind a false circuit breaker box. 5 years of midnight inspections, nobody bothered to log or question, he explained as he operated the hidden mechanism. Sometimes being invisible has its advantages. The panel slid aside, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel barely tall enough for a person to walk upright. Emergency lighting cast a dim glow along its length, disappearing into darkness in the direction of the embassy. It's 3/4 of a mile to the embassy access point, Jack informed them, taking point position. Single file, maintain silent, step where I step. The tunnel stretched before them like a concrete artery beneath the desert, carrying power conduits and data cables that served as the embassy's lifelines. After 20 minutes of careful progress, they reached a junction where the tunnel split in 3 directions. The central path leads to the main environmental control room, Jack explained in hushed tones. From there, we can access the ventilation system for the entire facility, including the summit chamber. And the Vraxians, Sarah asked. How many do you estimate are inside? Jack's expression was grim. Based on Dr. Chen's intelligence and what we witnessed at the facility, potentially dozens distributed throughout security, diplomatic staff, and support personnel. We'll be outnumbered and surrounded, Dr. Chen observed, though his voice showed no fear, even only the calm assessment of a scientist quantifying variables. We've been outnumbered since this began, Jack reminded him, but we have 2 advantages. They don't know we're coming, and they don't know we can expose them. They continued through the central tunnel until reaching a heavily reinforced door marked Environmental Systems, Authorized Personnel Only. Jack entered his maintenance code, and for a tense moment they feared their access might have been revoked. Then the lock disengaged with a soft click. The environmental control room hummed with the steady operation of systems maintaining precise conditions for dozens of different species throughout the embassy. Massive air handlers processed atmosphere for every section of the building, while specialized systems generated custom environments for non-human biology. Jack moved directly to the main console, his fingers flying across the familiar controls. I can access the summit chamber ventilation from here, but the system will register the introduction of any new compound. It will trigger alerts. Dr. Chen stepped forward, studying the system. Not if we mask it as a standard atmospheric adjustment. He pointed to a calibration protocol. They're the oxygen enrichment cycle for the Brentary delegation. We can piggyback our formula on that scheduled process. While they prepared the ventilation system, Sarah kept watch at the door, the contractor's weapon ready. Zelnar assisted Dr. Chen in preparing the formula for dispersal, his crystalline appendages manipulating the delicate equipment with surprising dexterity. How will we know it's working? Sarah asked. The Vraxians will have no choice but to reveal their true forms, Dr. Chen explained. The compound disrupts their mimetic cellular structure at the molecular level. The effect is irreversible with sufficient exposure. Jack checked his watch. Summit reconvenes in 18 minutes. Once we initiate dispersal, we need to reach the main chamber to ensure Zelnar can address the delegates and reveal the truth. Dr. Chen connected the dispersal device to the ventilation intake, carefully calibrating the flow rate. Ready on your mark, Colonel. Jack took a moment to look at each member of their unlikely team, the brilliant xenobiologist who had never stopped searching for her father, the respected scientist who had survived 15 years of captivity through sheer determination, and the alien professor whose courage matched any human soldier Jack had served with. Initiate dispersal. He ordered, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had once commanded elite soldiers in the world's most dangerous places. Dr. Chen activated the device, and the formula began flowing into the embassy's ventilation system, invisible, odorless, but carrying the power to expose an alien infiltration years in the making. Now we move, Jack said, retrieving his weapon. The service corridor will take us close to the summit chamber with minimal exposure. They left the environmental control room, moving through maintenance passages known only to the embassy's support staff, the invisible workers who kept the complex functioning, but rarely received notice or recognition. Jack led with practiced efficiency, his movements silent despite his age. As they approached the diplomatic sector, the first signs of chaos reached them, raised voices, alarms, the sound of running feet. It's starting, Dr. Chen observed with grim satisfaction. They reached a security door that would grant them access to the diplomatic wing adjacent to the summit chamber. Jack swiped his maintenance badge, but the reader flashed red, denied. They've locked down all non-essential personnel, he muttered, already reaching for the manual override he had installed years earlier, another unofficial modification made during routine maintenance. The door slid open, revealing a corridor in chaos. Embassy staff ran in multiple directions, some clutching their throats, others staring in horror at colleagues whose appearances were beginning to waver and distort, human features melting away to reveal the chitinous insectoid aspects of Vraxian physiology. It's working, Sarah whispered, watching as a security officer's face rippled like water, his uniform stretching to accommodate the larger inhuman form emerging beneath. Move quickly, Jack instructed, leading them through the confusion toward the summit chamber. The exposed Vraxians will be desperate to escape or silence us. They had nearly reached the main diplomatic concourse when a figure stepped into their path, Director Elizabeth Harrington, her composed expression at odds with the pandemonium surrounding them. Colonel Reynolds, she greeted him, her voice perfectly steady. I'm disappointed but not surprised to find you at the center of this incident. Jack raised his weapon, studying her carefully. Are you Director, or should we wait another minute to find out? A thin smile touched Harrington's lips. Still the soldier, Jack. Always suspicious. She raised her hand slowly. I'm human, as you'll confirm shortly, but I've known about the Vraxian infiltration for over a year. Known and done nothing, Sarah challenged, her weapon also trained on the Director. Done everything possible without alerting them to our awareness, Harrington corrected. including allowing a decorated Special Forces colonel to push a mop for 5 years while we gathered intelligence on their operations. Jack's eyes narrowed. You knew who I was. All this time. Of course I knew, Harrington replied. Your retirement was part of a compartmentalized operation after Peru. Only 5 people on Earth knew you were still active on the longest deep cover assignment in military history. Before Jack could process this revelation, a guttural scream echoed from the summit chamber, the unmistakable sound of a Vraxian in distress. Explanations later, Harrington said, her professional demeanor returning. Right now, we need to secure the chamber and explain to 24 alien delegations why some of their colleagues are transforming into insectoid creatures. Together, they rushed toward the summit chamber, where the most important diplomatic event in Earth's history had descended into chaos and revelation. The Botanical Summit's Grand Chamber had transformed from a showcase of interstellar diplomacy into a scene of otherworldly pandemonium. Delegates from 24 worlds scrambled for safety as security personnel, some maintaining human form, others horrifically transforming, struggled to maintain order. At the center of the chamber, the chief Vraxian agent, still in his Proxima Centauri disguise but showing signs of destabilization, held the podium. His voice, amplified through the chamber's sound system, attempted to control the narrative. Remain calm. This is a terrorist attack by Earth extremists using biological agents. Security will escort all delegates to safety while the contaminant is neutralized. Jack, Sarah, Dr. Chen, and Zelnar entered from a side access point, with Director Harrington close behind. Jack assessed the situation instantly. The Vraxians were attempting an evacuation to remove delegates before their true forms were completely exposed. Professor, Jack turned to Zelnar. Are you ready to deliver a very different presentation than the one they planned? The crystalline scientist form pulsed with determined light. More ready than I have ever been, Colonel. Jack nodded to Dr. Chen. Doctor, the technical station, can you access the main presentation system? With pleasure, Chen replied, already moving toward the control console, where he could override the chamber's audio-visual systems. Jack turned to Sarah and Harrington. Cover them. Prioritize protecting Zelnar until he can address the assembly. As the group split to execute their roles, the first fully transformed Vraxian noticed their entrance. The creature, 7 feet tall with a chitinous exoskeleton and compound eyes, abandoned all pretense of humanity and charged toward them, mandibles clicking in rage. Jack met the attack with the calm efficiency that had once made him legendary in combat circles. Despite the alien's superior size and strength, Jack's movements were precise and economical, using the creature's momentum against it. A quick sidestep, a leveraged throw, and the Vraxian crashed into a display of Earth botanical specimens. Across the chamber, Dr. Chen reached the technical station, quickly overriding security protocols to access the main presentation system. Sarah and Harrington positioned themselves to protect Zelnar as he made his way toward the central podium, still occupied by the lead Vraxian agent, whose disguise was deteriorating by the second. Attention delegates of the Interstellar Botanical Summit. Dr. Chen's voice boomed through the chamber's speakers, cutting through the chaos. What you are witnessing is not a terrorist attack, but the exposure of a long-term infiltration of Earth and other worlds by Vraxian agents. On the massive display screens around the chamber, images appeared. Dr. Chen's classified research documentation of Vraxian infiltration techniques, evidence of their systematic elimination of those who discovered their presence. The chief Vraxian agent abandoned the podium, his form now rippling uncontrollably between human disguise and true form. Zelnar seized the opportunity, taking the central position as delegates and security personnel alike froze in shock at the revelations unfolding on screen. Distinguished representatives, Zelnar's translator projected his voice clearly across the chamber. I am Professor Zelnar of the Crystallian Science Academy. I was brought to Earth under duress to deliver false testimony about Earth's botanical compounds, specifically capsaicin found in what humans call hot peppers. The chamber grew quiet as confusion gave way to focused attention. The Vraxians planned to have Earth classified as a death world and placed under quarantine, Zelnar continued. Not because Earth plants are dangerous to most species, but because one common Earth compound, capsaicin, is lethal to Vraxians and can expose their mimetic disguises, as you now witness. Jack maintained his position near Zelnar, watching as more Vraxians throughout the chamber lost control of their human forms, their true insectoid bodies emerging like grotesque butterflies from human chrysalises. The Vraxian Dominion has systematically infiltrated governments across the galaxy. Zelnar explained his crystalline form, pulsing with emotional light patterns. They have eliminated scientists who discovered their weakness, including my research team, who they held captive on Earth itself. Dr. Chen joined them at the podium, his presence lending human authority to Zelnar's claims. I am Dr. David Chen, Earth scientist. I was held prisoner for 15 years because I discovered how to expose Vraxian infiltrators using a compound derived from capsaicin, the very compound now revealing their presence among us. The revelation sent shock waves through the assembled delegates. Representatives from worlds who had experienced unexplained disruptions or mysterious policy changes began connecting events to possible Vraxian influence. The remaining security forces, those confirmed human by their unchanged appearance despite capsaicin exposure, had begun isolating and containing the revealed Vraxians. Director Harrington coordinated their efforts with crisp efficiency, securing the chamber section by section. As the situation stabilized, Jack stepped back, allowing the diplomatic and scientific experts to take center stage. This was no longer a battlefield requiring his particular skills. It had transformed into a historic moment of truth and revelation that would reshape interstellar relations for generations. Sarah approached him, watching as her father, believed dead for 15 years, addressed representatives from across the galaxy explaining how Earth's spiciest foods had inadvertently become the most important defensive discovery in recent galactic history. What happens now? She asked quietly. Jack's weathered face showed the calm satisfaction of a mission successfully completed. Now the diplomats and scientists take over. They'll form committees, establish protocols, create new security measures. He allowed himself a small smile. And every world in the galaxy will suddenly develop a strong interest in Earth's hot sauce recipes. Sarah studied him thoughtfully. And what about you, Colonel Back, to pushing a mop? Before Jack could respond, Director Harrington joined them, her professional composure firmly in place, despite the extraordinary events unfolding around them. I believe the Colonel has completed his long-term deep cover assignment, she observed dryly. Perhaps it's time for a more appropriate use of his unique skill set. Jack raised an eyebrow. You kept me pushing that mop for 5 years, Director. And you discovered an alien infiltration that threatened Earth and a dozen other worlds, she countered. I'd say the assignment was successful, wouldn't you? A subtle shift in the chamber's atmosphere interrupted their conversation. The main doors had opened to admit a new delegation. Crystallians, their forms glowing with vibrant light patterns that indicated strong emotion. Zelnar froze mid-sentence at the podium, his 3 eyes fixed on the newcomers. Without waiting for translation, he rushed toward them, his crystalline appendages outstretched in a gesture unmistakable across species reunion. His family, Sarah realized watching as Zelnar embraced the Crystallians. But how we thought they were captives. They were, Harrington confirmed, on a Vraxian vessel in Earth orbit. When your capsaicin compound began affecting Vraxians in the embassy, our deep space monitoring detected unusual activity around the vessel. A strike team was deployed, and they found several Crystallian captives on board. Jack watched the reunion with quiet satisfaction. After decades of combat and sacrifice, such moments families restored prisoners, freed threats, neutralized were the true measure of success. As the chaos of revelations settled into the more orderly process of diplomatic response, Jack Reynolds, the forgotten soldier who had spent 20 years in the shadows, found himself suddenly visible to everyone. Delegates from across the galaxy approached to express gratitude. Security personnel regarded him with newfound respect, and even the maintenance staff, his colleagues for 5 years, viewed him with awe. Yet, amid the recognition and acclaim, Jack felt the familiar pull of the shadows. He had completed his mission, but new threats would emerge. Earth's place in the galactic community was secure for now, but vigilance would always be necessary. Director Harrington seemed to read his thoughts. Don't worry, Colonel, I'm not putting you back on mop duty. She handed him a small data device. Your new security clearancy and assignment details. Earth needs an experienced officer to head our new xenobiological security division. Someone who understands both the tactical and diplomatic aspects of our interstellar relationships. Jack accepted the device, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. I've been invisible for a long time, Director. Not sure I remember how to wear a uniform or give speeches. Then don't, she replied simply. Operate as you always have, quietly, effectively, in the spaces between official channels. The only difference is you'll have the authority and resources to match your experience. As the diplomatic proceedings continued around them, Jack found himself standing beside Dr. Baum. Chen, both men watching as Sarah engaged in animated discussion with a group of alien scientists, her expertise earning their respect despite her youth. She's remarkable, Jack observed. Never gave up searching for you. Oh, never stopped believing in what you'd discovered. Chen nodded, pride evident in his expression. Stubbornness runs in the family. He glanced at Jack. Speaking of family, what about you, Colonel? Anyone waiting for the invisible janitor to come home? Jack shook his head. My work became my life a long time ago, Doctor. Hard to maintain connections when you're deployed to places that don't exist on any map. Perhaps that changes now, Chen suggested. New assignment, new possibilities. Before Jack could respond, Zonar approached, accompanied by his reunited family. The crystalline scientist form glowed with an intensity that translated, even without words, joy, gratitude, relief. Colonel Reynolds, Zelnor's translator, conveyed, my family wishes to thank you personally. Your actions have saved not only them, but countless others across many worlds. Jack nodded respectfully to the crystalline family. Just doing my job, Professor. A job I should have completed 20 years ago in Peru. Some missions take longer than others, Zelnar observed philosophically, but the most important ones find their way to completion regardless of time. As the summit transitioned from crisis to constructive response plans, we're already forming for a new interstellar security protocol centered around capsaicin detection systems. Earth's hot peppers, once simply culinary curiosities, would become the foundation of galactic security measures. Sarah rejoined them, her expression showing the excitement of scientific discovery. The Brentari delegation has already proposed a joint research initiative on capsaicin applications. They want both of you involved, she added, looking at her father and Jack. Both of us, Jack questioned. I'm a soldier, not a scientist. You're the man who recognized the significance of capsaicin 20 years before anyone else, Dr. Chen corrected him. Sometimes the most important scientific discoveries come from those who observe what others miss. Director Harrington approached their group, her expression serious. Colonel, we have a situation developing. 3 Vraxian vessels have been detected entering the solar system. Jack's mind immediately shifted to tactical assessment. Response. That's being determined now, Harrington replied. Your input would be valuable in the briefing. As Jack prepared to follow her, Zelnar spoke up. Colonel, before you go, my people have a tradition for those who save lives. We call it the Shimmerlight Ceremony. It would honor us greatly if you would accept this recognition. Jack hesitated, uncomfortable with formal acknowledgement after decades of operating in the shadows. But looking at the faces around him, Sarah and Dr. Chen Zoner and his family, even Director Harrington, he recognized something important had changed. His invisibility had served its purpose. But a new chapter required visibility. Leadership, mentorship, the passing of knowledge to those who would continue the mission. I would be honored, Professor, he replied with dignity. But first we have Vraxian ships to deal with. He turned to follow Harrington, then paused, looking back at the group. And after that, I think I might try some of that famous Thai food Sarah's been recommending. I hear they make it properly spicy. As Colonel Jack Reynolds walked toward his new assignment, his back straight and his step purposeful, he left behind the invisible janitor forever. Ahead lay new challenges, new battles, and perhaps something he had sacrificed long ago. Connection, purpose beyond the mission, even family of a different kind. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, Vraxian commanders were about to learn a crucial lesson about Earth. Its most powerful weapons weren't found in military arsenals or advanced technology, but in the humble plants that had evolved over millions of years to produce a chemical humans called capsaicin, and the galaxy would come to know as their salvation.